All right, so it looks like we are live. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining us on another episode of Awakening Consciousness with Asher and Jesse. Jesse is not here with us today, but I do have a very special guest. His name is Stephen Roberts. Stephen is the host of Shake and Wake Radio, PSNR Radio, SoFlo Radio. He has a blog. It's called Cancel the Cabal blog, and he's been, I would say, a veteran in the truth movement for a long time. He probably has a little bit more experience than me, and so today we're going to be talking with him, seeing through the deceptions. There's a lot of deceptions going on. There's a recent video coming on now on a new thing that we're supposed to be afraid of. And I think when you are able to see through the deceptions and the lies and the manipulation that is going on in the media and the government agencies, then you're better able to live your life. And that's ultimately what it comes down to. And so we're going to be talking with him about that today and probably many other topics. So Stephen, welcome. Thank you for joining us, and welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, Asher. It's very good to be here. Very good to expand out. I don't get invited on very many shows myself because I do have just one day a week that I do my own shows. That's on Tuesdays.
Okay.
But I am on 4 stations, internet radio stations. And so I do have a little bit of a following. I did have a YouTube channel for, well, let's see. I started that in 2013.
Mm-hmm.
I actually have one YouTube channel now, but it has 2 strikes on it, and I just don't do anything with it but watch YouTube videos.
Right.
The second one is the one that got taken away about 3 to 4 months back because of this. Well, for the lack of a better word, it gets overused, but it is a scam, in my opinion. And I believe, talking to you, that it is a scam, in your opinion too. The last 2 years we've been dealing with.
Yeah. So talk about that. So how maybe take me back a little bit further and sort of your awakening moments, and then walk me through up to 2020 when everything happened, and how were you able to see through the lies and the deception that was essentially forced upon us?
Sure. I will be 58 in 10 days, actually. If they decide to let me live that long. I know that's a bit of a joke, but there's a lot of truth in comedy. There are too many people here in the last dozen years or so that have exposed a lot of things and mysteriously come up missing or died in just generic ways, mysterious ways. It is a joke. I don't expect to be taken out, but I have had a lot of mysterious things happen to me over the past 13 years. What I think are little messages. They like to send messages, by the way. Just a quick story. I think it was Breitbart, Andrew Breitbart. I don't remember the year, whatever the year he was killed. He said that something to the effect that he had the information that would get him suicided by Hillary Clinton. I think that was also the one TV host. I don't remember his name now. It's only been like 3 or 4 years back. He said he also had the information that would get him suicided by Hillary Clinton. And I say that a lot jokingly, but I don't expect to get taken out. My background previous to 2000 2003, I was a blue collar worker. I worked in factories for 11 years, and I drove a truck for 11 years over the road. And I have been disabled with rheumatoid arthritis for 30 years now. And finally, in 2003, it just got too much to handle, and I went on Social Security Disability, SSI. Over in Europe, they call it the pension. I took care of my dad the last 10 years of his life, and he died in August of 2008. Shortly after that, I don't really know how to attribute it. Some people call it the universe or God or whatever you want to call it. It doesn't really matter. Something got into my head that I needed to go back to school to get more of an education. I didn't really like school. I didn't really get much from school. I didn't apply myself, but like I said, I don't really know what it was. Something made me look into online college, online schooling. And I did. I called the recruiter for University of Phoenix Online. I called him in October 2009. And we talked for weeks and weeks and weeks. I wasn't convinced. But then, we talked for 3 months, probably a couple hours a week for 3 months. And he just pushed and prodded, and I was finally convinced. About the end of January 2009. I was given a computer for Christmas 2008. And I guess it was on like 4 or 5 weeks we talked, but I did enroll into the IT field at the University of Phoenix online. I had this fantastic idea that I wanted to be a web designer. And I was in the first block. The first block of classes happened to be a communications class and one of the IT field classes. I quickly realized after about a week and a half, that it wasn't what I thought it was. It ended up being Linux coding. And I just knew I was over my head. I wanted out, but I wasn't going to quit college. So I contacted my recruiter the second week, and I said, can I switch majors? And he said, yeah, you can switch, but you have to finish out this first block. So I finished it out. And the second block, the second 9-week block, ended up being a communications class and what's called a critical thinking class. It's CRT 205 was the class's name. And I had been listening to Alex Jones for a couple of months because of this new computer stuff was just new to me. I hadn't had a computer previous till 2009 because I had heard all of the stories back in the late 80s and all throughout the 90s and most of the 2000s. I had heard all the stories, all of the horror stories that computers were just going to spy upon us. They were going to steal our data and they were going to do this and they were going to do that. And when I first got the computer, it all turned out to be true. They weren't conspiracy theories as it ends up.
Yeah, no, they have more information on us than we care to admit.
Yes, there's an interesting story out there. Of course, nobody's going to be able to totally 100% confirm it or not, but 1932, the J. Edgar Hoover, the director of the FBI, went to the newly elected or selected Franklin Delano Roosevelt president. He said, Mr. President, we have dossiers or files on 150 million of the 220 million Americans, and we need to get busy, sir. That's the story that's out there. And that was 90 years ago, wasn't it? I was getting to, oh yeah, the Alex Jones story. I was reading, I was in the second or third day of my critical thinking class, and I'm sitting here reading about these logical fallacies and these, they're called uh, rhetoric, deceptive devices, is what the curriculum was starting to read. And I'm reading about all of these logical fallacies: a straw man attack, appeal to ridicule, appeal to authority, appeal to this, appeal to historical practices, appeal to the credentials. There are dozens of them, actually. And there are subsets of many, many others that correlate together. And I'm sitting here reading the second day of this class. We haven't even started doing anything, and listening to Alex Jones. And he's talking about two political pundits on one of these so-called nightly news agencies. They're bickering back and forth like they do on every night, whatever the topic happens to be. And he says, that's a classic straw man attack. And my eyes lit up because I'm sitting here listening to him. And I just read about that 5 minutes ago. I just read about these rhetorical devices, these logical fallacies. And so he happened to be live that day, of course. I had to wait about 2.5 hours to listen to the rebroadcast because you can't really pause his station live when he's on live video. But after he's done, he loops the rebroadcast for 24 hours until he goes back again. I had to wait 2.5 hours to listen to that part again. Listen, he said, you can go back on YouTube and type this search in. And I did that. I went back on YouTube and typed that search in and watched these two political pundits go back and forth. And, you know, sure as snot rolls down a two-year-old's face, that's what it was, looking at me right in the eye. A rhetorical device, a straw man attack, the practical application for rhetoric in the news. They also use it in advertising, and they use it in government.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's almost like they are masters at rhetoric. And I'm just thinking back to, COVID and the rest of it, and thinking how many of those aspects they used, appeal to authority, shaming tactics, the herd mentality, and all of the rest of the rhetorical tricks that they use to get people to either go along or convince the people who didn't want to go along to also join in with the rest of them. And it's, if you go back and have that, either education or knowledge of how people use rhetorical tricks to convince people to do something or to persuade people into a mindset or a belief, you can clearly see what's going on there, and you can clearly see the agenda and the just the tricks and manipulation they use to get people to go along with what their plans are.
Certainly. One easy little trick that anyone can use, if you've heard of Occam's razor, and even if you haven't heard of Occam's razor, you can search that up. It's OCCAMZ, I believe, Occam's razor. What that basically boils down to is, what Occam's razor says is there may be a multitude of explanations for any little issue that you happen to deal with, whether it's it doesn't really matter. There may be multiple answers to an issue, but normally the easiest answer is the correct answer. That's what Occam's razor is. It's pretty much your gut feeling on your first instinct is what Occam's razor is. That can basically help anyone start to learn how to change your mindset, because we all have been indoctrinated for a long, long time. It's it's been said that in the elite's own writings, their own white papers, as it's called, they stated back in the 1840s, we needed to have an electronic plutocratic dictatorship. What that means is people were, oddly enough, a lot of people won't even think that this is true, but back in the middle of the 19th century, just the common people were a lot more astute and a lot smarter than what a lot of people are in America today. They really did not fall for the tactics that people fall for today. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I've heard statistics that the average IQ point for children is it has dropped like 7 points in the last like decade and a half.
Oh, it is probably easy that much, and I would say up until the late 50s, it's probably been a 30-point drop, because rhetoric and that was still taught in high schools and college up until late 50s, early 60s. It's when they really started their push for dumbing down of America.
Yeah. Right. I mean, you know, a more classical education, we're
they
going back 70 plus years, and
they call it one of the liberal arts.
Yeah.
Rhetoric
and
is
now,
one of the liberal arts.
Yeah. And we did a show on, we mentioned the Baltimore public schools. I think they had 3 people graduate from high school in the Baltimore City school district that were proficient at reading, like grade level reading. And there's got to be thousands, if not tens of thousands of students in the Baltimore public school system, and only 3 of them are proficient at reading. And what a fall from, whatever levels we were at to where we are now. And that's, it's just astounding. And then, I remember this George Carlin quote. He said something along the lines of, imagine how dumb the average person is, and half the people are even dumber than that. And it's just like, and then you have people staring in screens all day, watching their siloed news programs. They get funneled into a certain set of beliefs systems, but by the Facebook algorithms and whatever social media platform they're on. You get into this information silo, and combine that with no critical thinking skills, no ability to see the rhetoric that's going on, and you have a perfect recipe for indoctrinating millions of people into a belief.
Yes, well, I'm of the age, and I'm sure you can ask your father this question. He's probably close to the same age too. That I remember back in the 70s and the 80s, the so-called Liberal Party back then, they would have this mantra whenever talking to someone else. They would say, "That's not a valid argument. Those are logical fallacies that you're just throwing out there. You don't have a logical, valid argument." And now, in the last 5 years at least, they seem to be the progenitors of the most deceptive devices and manipulative devices. They seem to be the ones doing it the most. But like I said, I don't have a party anymore. I wasn't born a bird, so I don't have a wing anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know. I started off as more, kind of left wing, Democrat. I voted for Obama in 2008 and was pretty much disillusioned with him by 2010. And that's kind of when I had my awakening experience. And yeah, I don't participate in the left right paradigm. paradigm anymore. It seems like the each side is meant to get the other side's agenda passed. And so like, that's why you have, Obama starting a lot of wars despite winning the Nobel Peace Prize. He starts a lot of wars, and then a few years later, Trump has stimulus packages and bailouts, and he does the Operation Warp Speed and gets the vaccine approved and authorized and ready to go. And so each side is sort of doing the other side's bidding, where that side wouldn't have been able to get away with it.
Yes. Well, it's people seem to forget very, very easily that Obama was part of the anti-war left, and all starting his Illinois Senate career in 2004. He was one of the progenitors of the anti-war left. He was anti-war. He was anti-anything Bush Jr. did. And then the joke after he came out in 2009, 2010, somewhere in that area, that the joke was that Obama outbushed Bush in his wars and his warmongering. And, the left seemed to that memory just seemed to go away for some reason. I don't know. Yeah. And the anti-war left has mysteriously been absent the last year or so.
Yeah, the only time they praised Trump was when he was bombing Syria.
Yeah,
they said, "Well, now he's acting presidential."
Yeah,
and it's like, wait, what? So now you're in favor of this? It's like, when did that happen? And we could probably go on for weeks about the what's it called, the duplicitous nature of the left and all that stuff. But we don't want to bore people.
Well, bore people or blow their paradigms apart. There's that's two different dichotomies there.
Yeah, that's true. Although I think the viewers of our show aren't too caught up in the left-right paradigm. They seem to be more awake than that, I would say.
Well, that's good. And I heard a statistic when I first started doing this, and I researched for a couple of years after February 2009. I guess it was about 3.5 years, almost 4. I was listening to a internet radio show. It was on YouTube. He was broadcasting live on YouTube. I think I'm sorry. He wasn't doing that, but he was uploading it to YouTube. And he's talking about this new world order, and he's going off. He's cursing a lot, which I don't really do. I don't do much. I haven't said about 5 bad curse words on air in 9 years that I've been doing this. But he said, by the way, if you want to broadcast on the network, just hit me up. And so I did. And that was in December of 2012. And I started doing this in about February of 2013. So it's been a little over 9 years. And I was very, very nervous in the beginning, that's for sure, because I was quite introverted, I think is the word, or extroverted. I don't know. I was quite shy for long. Extroverted, is that what it is?
Introverted.
When you're very shy? Okay.
Yeah.
I can never remember which one it is, but it took me quite a while to get used to the camera and get used to speaking to people, but now it's just second nature. And I've been doing it for a little over 9 years now.
So talk to me about your shows and your radio. What sort of topics do you cover?
Well, as you can see, I don't have a producer behind me, so there's nobody I don't talk about. I don't have any corporate funding because there are too many subjects that the mainstream will not touch and do not touch. You know, how does somebody on Fox News or CNN criticize the people that pay them? You can basically see, and there are videos out there that are showing this. I don't know who it is. Just pick one. Fox News nightly hosted by Pfizer. Funding provided by Pfizer. Funding provided by whomever. Bayer, Moderna. Just pick one.
Yeah.
You're not going to criticize the one that pays your checkbook, pays your pockets.
Yeah. And I think, and, you know, it's obviously not limited to Fox News, but all of them.
Correct.
And, you know, and definitely include Fox News in there because, you know, the left, the current iteration of the left wing or the Democrats, you know, they seem more awful than the right wing at this time, but that doesn't mean that, you know, it's just kind of their turn to move the ball forward for, you know, whatever the agenda is, you know, and then now the right wing is, you know, pretending like they're fighting back, but really they're just losing slowly.
Yes. I want to go back a little bit in history. I don't know how much research you have done, but a lot of us have done a lot of research. Richard Nixon was a well, let's just put it, a Nazi. George Bush Sr. was a Nazi. George Bush Jr. is. Bill Clinton is he's the only reason he's a Democrat is because they needed a different looking puppet at the time. Mm-hmm. And they put him into place. He helped down in Mena, Arkansas, back in the early 80s when he was governor there. He helped them cover up a lot of the drug running that come into Arkansas, come into that whole area down there. He was the cleaner, him and Hillary. A lot of people don't even know that Hillary Clinton, her father was a mafia boss in the Chicago area. She's a mafia daughter. She has more power than Bill Clinton ever dreamed of having. That was a marriage of convenience, basically. It was a political marriage is what they call it. Mm-hmm. I don't remember what year it was, maybe 95 or 96. Bill Clinton said in an interview, "I really don't like that woman. I'm scared of her. We haven't had sex. We haven't had sex twice in our marriage." And that was, you know, they've been married a dozen years or so, or 15, 20 years, whatever the case was. He said, "I'm really afraid of her." That's my Bill Clinton imitation there. Sorry about that.
It's a good one.
Yeah, "I did not have sex with that woman, Miss Monica Lewinsky, not one time. How dare you?"
Yeah, well, I wouldn't either. So I don't blame him.
But Hillary's actually the one that had the power in that family. Many people believe that she was the one that actually ran the White House, as well as Laura Bush. She's the one that had the power in that family too, and she still does.
Interesting. I didn't know that. I mean, I knew. You know, Barbara certainly has. You know, her authority, but the Bushes, I mean, they go back to, you know, Prescott Bush, along with Joseph Kennedy, were funding the Nazis, you know, in and before World War II. So, you know, it goes back a whole way. And then, you know, we could talk Operation Paperclip and Bush, you know, getting Nazi scientists over here, starting NASA and the rest of it. And
Bush actually isn't even their name. They're German. Let's just put it that way. The Bush family is German. I think it was somewhere in the late 19th century when they come over here to America and they changed their name. I've heard the name once, but I don't remember what it was. I should have wrote it down, but it's some German name that they, when they came over here, they just didn't want to be associated with that name anymore, so they changed it to Bush.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, so many people have come from the sort of Nazi party in Germany over to the U.S. and are, you know, in various forms of government, media, and the rest of it. And at this point, it's, you know, it's impossible. I would say it's impossible to, you know, really tease out who's real and who's, you know, who's coming from what, and what their true agenda is.
Well, there is there are ways to find out what their true agenda is. You just have to look into their secret societies that they belong to, and you have to research their writings in these secret societies. They are all on the internet for anyone to find. You just have to, you just have to know how to look. Um, Bush, Prescott Bush, was part of Skull and Bones.
Mm-hmm.
He was a graduate of Yale University, I think, in 1917.
Mm-hmm.
Oddly enough, I think his son, George Herbert Walker Bush, was born in 1918, and he was a he was also a graduate of Skull and Bones in 1948.
Mm-hmm.
I think
As was W.
W was born in, I think, 47 or 48, one or the other, I don't remember. And he was a graduate of Skull and Bones in 68. So,
Mm-hmm.
it goes in linear cycles with these people. It has been said that Prescott Bush was part of the little Skull and Bones team. There was a few of them that broke into, I think, the Smithsonian Institution and stole Geronimo's skull. And he and
Mm-hmm.
others, well, he's passed on now. Prescott has, but uh, Bush Senior has also passed on too. And who's to say that one of those people or one of their children or grandchildren don't have Geronimo's skull right now? That was
Mm-hmm.
uh, a ritual for these people and him at the time. And everything is still a ritual with these people. Satanic
Yeah.
ritual, of course.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's I think the root of their agenda, you know, and we have Bob and Ann in the chat, you know, the agenda is to lower the population so they can manage it. And yes, I think that is absolutely true. I think we're seeing it now. Obviously, I think that's what the last 2 years have been about. And it seems fairly obvious. And I think that uh, I think it's going to, honestly, I think it's going to play out to a certain extent. Um,
Well,
Unfortunately, but
the Georgia Guidestones were erected in 1980, 42 years ago. Uh,
mhm.
that does say that. I think in 12 different languages, they want to call the world's population down to 500 million, half a billion. But there are some people that actually theorize they want that number closer to 500,000. You really want to look at it and think about it. They really only need a half a million people, 500,000 people to uh, do their biddings, to serve them, so to speak. They don't really need a lot of us thinking. That's why they changed especially the American public education system back at the end of the 19th century. They brought in the Prussian education system, which really pushed the Prussian education system really pushed for the dumbing down of their people. The Prussian army, they didn't want people thinking too much. They just wanted people to carry out their orders, kind of like our American military and the police today. That's
Mhm.
There was a lawsuit in New York about 10 years ago. A man sued the New York Police Department. I don't remember what his name. People can go look this up. The New York Police Department said he was too smart for them. Um,
Yeah.
they, I think he had like 125 or 130 IQ. You know, that's getting up there into a little bit better education, better, higher intelligence than that. They only wanted, I think, the lawsuit said that they only wanted somebody at 104 or less of an IQ.
Mhm.
Um, you can, somebody can look this up in psychology today. 74 is considered mildly retarded. You know, you have to get up into the 90s to become actually a little bit normal. I think, if I remember right, I watched the movie Idiocracy back in 2006, and I
Yeah.
think what's his name? Uh, what was the character's name? I don't know. Is that what it was?
I don't remember any of the names.
The
But
president? I don't
I
know.
do remember
I think his name was
seeing that
President. I
movie,
don't know.
and it's like a documentary at this point.
Yes, 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 it is. I think the character's name was President. I don't know. And
Mm.
I think they gave him an IQ of 104, and nobody in the world had ever seen that IQ because everybody was down in the
Yeah.
70s, you know.
Right.
But that's basically almost what it sounds like in this lawsuit. They don't want anybody with over 104 IQ.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm actually looking into policing now, and sort of taking a look at where I think the trajectory of what uh, police is going to look like in the future, because I think a lot of people in sort of the truth community kind of imagine this scenario of, you know, these brutal police, you know, they're going to come get us, and you know, they're going to force us to comply with various agendas and this and that. And I actually think the opposite is going to happen, because what you're seeing now is the last couple of years have been a complete demonization of the police. You have what you just mentioned about the restrictions on people with IQs that are too high getting into the police force. They just want compliant, obedient, you know, order followers.
Robots, if you will.
And I'm sorry.
Robots, if you will.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And then you have, you know, so you have the police being demonized. Not many people want to go be a police officer these days. And the quality and caliber of people signing up to join the police force is just decreasing and decreasing and decreasing. And then you're going to have a situation where the only people who want to join are those guys who are like, yeah, I want to go crack some skulls. You know, I want to be a cop so I can crack some skulls. And it's going to be, you know, fewer police officers than are necessary given the current crime
Well,
and what will happen to the future of crime, as in, you know, the economy goes down, people are struggling more and more, crime goes up, police, you know, the number of police is going to decrease, the quality and caliber of police is going to decrease. And rather than the boot on the neck vision that I think some people in the truth community have, I think it's going to be the exact opposite, where you're going to have something happen, want to call the police, and nobody's going to show up. And I think this is what's
well,
happening in large cities across the country. You know, in Detroit, you know, it's like an hour before you get a response or someone shows up. And I think that's going to happen more and more.
well, I think you're partially technically correct. There won't be that type of police anymore because I believe that they're going to go to the robotics. There have
Mhm.
been countless reports here in the last 2 years, kind of a coincidence there, the last 2 years that some Canadian cities are going to these robotic police dogs, have cameras and microphones, and They are just going around looking for policy enforcements. That's
Hmm.
basically in the last 100+ years, police have only been policy enforcements, corporate policy enforcers. They've they've admitted countless times. The Supreme Court of America has had to come out and admit that any police anywhere has no obligation to help you in any way if you're in trouble. They have
Yep.
no obligation. They can help you, but they have no obligation. It's in their own personal interest and their own personal safety, whether they do or not.
Right. Right. Yeah. They're there to follow the orders of their superiors, and that's it. And
Well,
so
their
if they,
their superiors are corporate entities.
right.
Their superiors are corporations. I don't know what your research entails you to follow, but everything is a corporate contract.
Hmm.
Um, People are under the belief that there are laws. They are corporate statutes. They're corporate rules. They're corporate regulations. Any little small town or county that is incorporated is under corporate rule. Um, it was the first police forces all over the world. I'm sure you've heard of the word tarred and feathered, right,
Yeah. Right.
Asher?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Most people have. What that actually is, um, when people had found out that their uh, whoever they voted into Congress or the Senate in their area, they did live partially in their own little towns and counties or whatever, but then they have mostly moved to the Washington D.C. area here in the last 50, 60 years. But there was a time in America's history and the world's history that people would march down to their congressman or their senator's office if they had found out they had gone against their word, and they would drag them out in the street and tar and feather them or just beat them to death. That's where that practice was still prevalent up until the 19th century. And for the most part, anyone can look this up on Wikipedia. Google it. Police forces were invented for crowd control. What that actually means is police are the protectors of the criminals in government, in my opinion. I know
Mhm.
I step on toes when I say that, but when you put two and two together, the Occam's razor comes out, and the simplest answer is the most obvious answer.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. And you have these politicians claiming that, I think in France, Macron said that people shouldn't be allowed to defend themselves. And yet he has, armed police officers guarding him wherever he goes.
Yes, yes, of course they do. Um, I think there's a meme that goes around a lot here. Um, I think it goes something to the effect: the reason they want your guns here in America is because they might be planning to do something to where you would use them against them.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's pretty clear. And in everywhere else where they've confiscated guns, bad things have bad
Look at
things have happened
Australia.
after that.
Look at
Yeah.
Australia. Look at
Yeah.
China. Look at New
Yeah.
Zealand.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a yeah, it's incredible. But I like to on our shows, I like to, yes, we can point out all the bad stuff and all the um, you know, lies, manipulation, and plans that the quote unquote, cabal or whatever you want to call them have. But at the end of the day, um, in my opinion, they have to get us to submit to them. They have to get us to opt into whatever they're doing. They have to get us to consent. And so, with this last iteration of, nonsense that they were doing, they needed us to consent to roll up our sleeve. They needed us to shut down our own businesses, to stay at home, to not see family, to not see friends, to do their bidding. And
Yes.
if you just didn't and said, you know what, I'm going to go visit my friends and I don't care what you say, or I'm not going to take your experimental injection, I don't care what you say, or I'm not shutting down my business, I'm going to remain open.
Yes.
And at the end of the day, they need us to do it to ourselves.
It's all by compliance. It absolutely.
Yeah. And sorry, go ahead.
The proof is in the pudding here, Asher. Absolutely. The proof is in the pudding. You go to the doctor previous to, was it March of 2020, and it still is true today. You go into your doctor's office or CVS or Walmart pharmacy, whatever the case is, or one of your walk-in clinics. You want to just get the regular, everyday old flu shot. Bam, stick it in your arm. Not this COVID-19 experimental mRNA, not even a vaccine. It's just a jab. You still have to sign a consent form for that flu shot. And anyone who has gotten the COVID-19 shot, you still have to sign a consent form. They need your consent. And many people don't even know. I think it was, I don't remember the year now, but I just seen a report that the health system has joined with the judicial system and the policing system. It hasn't been very long, like 2009 maybe, I want to say, but 2008, somewhere in that vicinity, they joined all three. That's when they give the pharmaceutical companies blanket immunity, zero accountability back in '86. Isn't that the year? I think that, am I correct? And it took them the 2009, the 2008 financial collapse, the one that started the destructive path, this path that we're on. They joined all three of those systems, the judicial and the prison industrial complex too. They joined all four of them right around that same time, 2008, 2009. By no accident, of course, all by coincidence. I mean, that's kind of sarcasm there, but that's no accident that they did all that. There's no accountability to the pharmaceutical industry and the medical industry for that fact. People are trying to sue these, and I believe, in my opinion, they're going to fail. I kind of hope not. I'm hoping somebody has figured it out totally, but I'm not sure.
I mean, I think they're going to fail in their ultimate agenda. We talked about the Georgia Guidestones and all that stuff, but I think that, like we just talked about, it's an opt-in system. They need our consent. They need us to do it to ourselves or to do it to your fellow man. And I think that, sort of the blinders are coming off humanity at this time. There's so many people who are waking up, have awoken in the last couple years, and are seeing the nonsense, for lack of a better term, for what it is, and are deciding to not comply. But not only that, are taking active measures in their own life to, become more resilient, more self-reliant, and, more responsible for their own trajectory of their lives. And I see that happening more and more. I see it happening with, our community of people and many others out there that are saying no to the nonsense and building a better life for ourselves. I think, viewership in mainstream media is hovering or
It's
might be at
tanked.
an all-time low.
It's tanked.
Yeah, there's all types of alternative social media platforms. There's all kinds of supply chain networks and people moving to what I would call like the new earth, or the good side, for lack of a better term. And I see that growing exponentially, and I see that the old legacy systems are dying and destroying themselves.
Yes, I agree. I think it was close to 10 years ago, 11 maybe. Um, I read an article that had a statistic on it. Back then, 2011, 2012, whatever the year was, there was 160 million people all over the world that were looking for alternative views, alternative news. I'm quite sure a decade later, you can put another zero on the end of that at least, and maybe even double that too. I would I would have to venture there's probably 2 billion people that are looking for alternative views and alternative news. And
Yeah.
YouTube and the internet has provided that platform for us.
Yeah,
Do you have a
absolutely.
chat room there that you're looking at, or?
Yeah,
Oh, that's right. You have
I'm
YouTube.
looking at it. Yeah, I'm looking at a chat. Bob and Ann, yeah, that was my son. He's crying. He's fine. My wife's got it. So yeah, someone heard a crying child in the background, which is true. That's my youngest, and he's not too happy right now, but my wife is taking care of him. So
Right,
he's
right,
gonna be just fine.
right. That's
Um,
understandable.
yeah, no
I heard it.
worries.
I just didn't. It didn't register
Yeah,
for
no,
me.
my wife's here. She's got it. There's three of them, so if she doesn't have, like, it happens. So
Yeah. I've also
um,
seen, there's one. there's
yeah, sorry.
it's kind of interesting. I've seen a statistic that 75% of the world's population has never seen a TV. They've never seen a cell phone. They've never seen a computer. They've never used this technology. There are literally hundreds of million of people in third worlds that don't know what we know. I mean, you hear this criticism from some of the Middle Eastern countries that they're backwards people, they're ignorant, they still live in the 12th century. Who's to say they don't live that way because of what they see in Western society? Maybe they don't want none of this.
Hmm.
Maybe they just want to be left alone. They don't want the technology. They don't want the control system that we have.
Hmm.
They those people know when they're being manipulated and deceived. And Americans and a lot of Western society don't.
Yeah. Isn't it true that I think the Amish, they send out their young people at a certain age to go experience the
16,
world, and like something like 95% of them come back and want nothing to do with it?
16
And
at the age of 16. Yes.
16, yeah, something like that.
I've
And
heard it's
yeah,
more like
I mean,
98%. Yeah.
98%, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised, because I mean, it feels like, or it doesn't feel like, it is, this demonic, uh you know devolved society that we live in, where it's clicks and attention and sex, and you know who can get the most attention by doing the most raunchy, outlandish thing. And that's not a healthy way to live. And I think that if you've grown up in a healthy environment, your father works, your mother stays home, takes care of the kids, you live a sort of wholesome life. When you're exposed to that environment, that sort of, it might be exciting, but I don't think I don't think many people would want that if they saw an alternative, if they saw what a good, clean, healthy life was like. And I think we're headed back to that. I think that there's a large segment of the population that wants a more natural, a more wholesome way of living. And I think it's just a matter of time before a large segment of the population actually just says, you know what, I'm just going to build that, and hope that a lot of other people come along for the ride. And I think that it's going to happen.
Yes, yes, yes. It's interesting that you brought that up. Psychology has theorized from multitude of studies. It will take, now this is their facts that I'm quoting. It will take 17 days for people to become cannibalistic once the collapse hits. Once the stores are emptied, once the trucking industry has stopped totally with, food shipments, this, that, and the other, once the power grid has gone down, it will take people 17 days to turn to cannibalism. That's their facts that they state. I think in the last 2 years here, millions of people laughed at the preppers, the prepping industry. And now some of us are looking like prophets, like, how did you know? Oh, well, we've been saying this for 60 years. I haven't. I've been saying it for 13, but
Yeah.
I don't know if I told you on the phone, but I heard about all of this stuff when I was a kid, when I was a young teenager. I heard the adults talking. I heard people talk, because I didn't really talk a whole lot when I was a kid. I was brutalized. I was molested as a little boy, and my psychological mindset, I didn't really want to talk a whole lot, and I didn't. I mean, sure, I spoke, but not like I'm doing right now. Not like I have been in the last 9 years. That's for sure. I was shut down for a long, long time, and I think probably about the age of 19, after I got out of boot camp in the Army. That's really when I started kickstarting my life. I started to reason and remember a lot of things. And I remembered back in the 70s, people talking about this new world order, and this was coming, and they were coming for our guns. And of course, they've been saying that for many, many decades, but probably about 100 or so years. But I cannot see I cannot foresee the future or anything, but I just see them having a really, really tough time taking 500 million guns from Americans. I really
do. Yeah. And
those are
sorry.
legitimate. Those are legitimate numbers, not illegal firearms either. Those are all legitimately owned guns. 500 million.
Yeah. And I the prepper thing, I have some comments about that. Like, my strategy is, rather than store up a bunch of food and that type of thing, is to build your own food system. So I grow all my own vegetables. This year my goal is to be 4 seasons. So I'm in North Carolina, and I think with some mild alterations or additions to my raised garden beds, I think I'll be able to grow all year round.
You can grow about almost 11 months a year, I'll bet, can't you? 10 maybe? Probably a solid 10.
Yeah, I had spinach that lasted the entire winter. It went the entire winter, so I'll be eating a lot of spinach next winter. But I think if I can build these coverings to the garden and to my beds on the cold days, I'll be able to grow all year round. I have eggs for my neighbors, and probably going to get chicken soon. So that's a much better way to, quote unquote, prep in my opinion, than to just store up a bunch of dried food and the rest of it. And so,
Correct.
it
Yeah.
just goes back to the entire message of what, our show is about, is to, become more self-reliant, more resilient, more independent, and, build that life. And it's actually a lot of fun. It's a lot more fun over here. I find that so many people in our, community, or have woken up in the last couple of years, are very positive and optimistic about where things are going. And if you ask them, would you go back to your, sort of pre-pandemic viewpoints and mindset, and everyone, I haven't heard a single person say, no, I'd rather go back and back to the way things were, back to my old mindset, back to, life as it was. Everyone, I haven't heard one person say they aren't happy with where they are now.
Yes. Yes. Well, psychology hasn't theorized this, but I have. Maybe they have too, and I just haven't heard of it. But America is especially going to be bad, mentality wise, emotionally wise. There are literally, I mean, how many people in America taking the demographics, you can extrapolate and theorize yourself. How many people use social media? How many people use smartphones? How many people use computers or laptops? I think there's 340 million people in America. I could theorize maybe 260 million people use these things on a daily basis. Laptops, smartphones, cell phones. For the most part, vast majority of elderly do not. I mean, how many elderly are here in America? I'm not sure what the demographics are. My stepdad's 81. He uses a smartphone. All he does is watch YouTube videos. he likes pool on YouTube, and he likes some singers. That's the only reason he got it for. He doesn't get into anything else. Majority of older people are going to be the same way. They don't really trust it, and they don't like it, and they don't want it. The young people, 30 and under, they are just enthralled with their little devices. I have an iPhone. I use it against them. But I've been saying for 13 years, what is it actually? What do you need to live? Do you need all these things? And if you can say that you do not, you're going to be okay. You need food, you need shelter, and you need clean water. That's all I had up until 2009. I didn't have the internet. I didn't have TikTok. I didn't have Twitter. I didn't have Facebook. I got those relatively, late in life. I didn't trust any of this until 2009. Well, I mean, I trust it less now because it all has come true. But there are people, millions in America alone, that trust this system, trust their smartphones, trust their computers, trust their TVs. And they really shouldn't.
Yeah.
So millions of people are going to go into deep depressions if this all comes true.
Yeah. I mean, it's going to be a split. It's going to be the people who are bought into the current narrative and all about their electronics and likes and clicks and the rest of it are going to have a hard time. And the people who see through the nonsense and are making active plans, I think, speaking from personal experience, I'm having a lot of fun. And I think a lot of other people are having a lot of fun and enjoying this time and see a better world in the future. And,
I think
again, it's
it's
an opt-in situation and we're not opting in.
I think it's no accident whatsoever that maybe about 15 years ago, um, I don't remember which the first show was, but the first show I paid attention was called Survivor Man. The guy up there in Canada, less something, Les Stroud maybe. No, I'm not sure. Maybe one of your listeners will know who that is. Survivor Man. He's a Canadian.
Yeah, I remember
He
that
went
show actually.
all over the world, all over North America, and eventually all over the world, spending a week out in whatever place he went. He's been to the Yukon. He's been to Siberia. He's been to Africa. Uh, he's been everywhere. I'm not sure if he does so much shows anymore. I think he had some scandal or something. I don't remember what it was, but that's one of the first ones that I remember coming up. And then there was some of the Alaskan shows. There's the Alaska, the Last Frontier, and then there's the Life Below Zero, and then there was uh, the Survivor series. The everybody remembers the Survivor shows. I never really watched that much, but and then there was Naked and Alive, and now you can watch about 30, 40 shows now. All these people that are prepping, all these people that are living off the grid, and all these people that are
Mhm.
rejecting so-called uh, civil society, you know. And
Mhm.
I think it's catching on too, Asher. Actually,
Yeah, I think so too. I think that's probably a good place to call it a day. Thank you for a great conversation. Please check out Steven's radio shows, SoFlo Radio, PSN Radio, EPGN Radio, Shake and Wake. What is it? Shake and Wake
Shake and Wake
radio
Radio. Yeah.
show, and
Oh,
Cancel the Cabal blog.
that's the name of my show. Is Cancel the Cabal, actually. So
All right. All right.
yes,
Well, it's been
thanks for
great
having me.
chatting with you. And yeah, have to do it again sometime.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on.